First thing in the morning, the chief priests, together with the elders and scribes and the rest of the Sanhedrin, had their plan ready. They had Jesus bound and took him away and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate put to him this question, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He replied, "It is you who say it." And the chief priests brought many accusations against him. Pilate questioned him again, "Have you no reply at all? See how many accusations they are bringing against you." But, to Pilate's surprise, Jesus made no further reply. At festival time Pilate used to release a prisoner for them, any one they asked for. Now a man called Barabbas was then in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the uprising. When the crowd went up and began to ask Pilate the customary favor, Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over. The chief priests, however, had incited the crowd to demand that he should release Barabbas for them instead. Then Pilate spoke again, "But in that case, what am I to do with the man you call king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "What harm has he done?" But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." So Pilate, anxious to placate the crowd, released Barabbas for them and, after having Jesus scourged, he handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led him away to the inner part of the palace, that is, the praetorium, and called the whole cohort together. They dressed him up in purple, twisted some thorns into a crown and put it on him. And they began saluting him, "Hail, King of the Jews." They struck his head with a reed and spat on him, and they went down on their knees to do him homage. And when they had finished making fun of him, they took off the purple and dressed him in his own clothes. They led him out to crucify him. They enlisted a passer-by, Simon of Cyrene, father of Alexander and Rufus, who was coming in from the country, to carry his cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. They offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he refused it. Then they crucified him, and shared out his clothing, casting lots to decide what each should get. It was the 3rd hour when they crucified him. The inscription giving the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And they crucified 2 bandits with him, one on his right and one on his left. The passers-by jeered at him, they shook their heads and said, "Aha! So you would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days? Then save yourself, come down from the cross." The chief priests and the scribes mocked him among themselves in the same way with the words, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, for us to see it and believe." Even those who were crucified with him taunted him. When the 6th hour came there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" Which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those who stood by heard this, they said, "Listen, he is calling on Elijah." Someone ran and soaked a sponge in vinegar and, putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait and see if Elijah will come to take him down." But Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the veil of the sanctuary was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The centurion, who was standing in front of him, had seen how he had died, and he said, "In truth this man was Son of God." There were some women watching from a distance. Among them were Mary of Magdala, Mary who was the mother of James the Younger and Joseph, and Salome. These used to follow him and look after him when he was in Galilee. And many other women were there who had come up to Jerusalem with him. It was now evening, and since it was preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, there came Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who himself lived in the hope of seeing the kingdom of God, and he boldly went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate, astonished that he should have died so soon, summoned the centurion and inquired if he had been dead for some time. Having been assured of this by the centurion, he granted the corpse to Joseph, who bought a shroud, took Jesus down from the cross, wrapped him in the shroud and laid him in a tomb which had been hewn out of the rock. He then rolled a stone against the entrance to the tomb. Mary of Magdala and Mary the mother of Joseph took note of where he was laid.